Welcome back to Globewise Entertainment. Today, we're diving into the wild, shocking, and unforgettable world of cinema with 15 80s films so controversial upon release they nearly vanished from history. From jaw-dropping violence to taboo-breaking stories, these films weren't just movies, they were cultural lightning rods that challenged audiences and enraged censors. If you haven't subscribed to Globewise Entertainment yet, hit that subscribe button now so you never miss the most fascinating stories from Hollywood's past. And tell us in the comments, which controversial 80s film shocked you the most? We want to hear your pick. 15. Paradise, 1982. The 1980s weren't exactly known for subtlety, but Paradise, 1982, took the decade's provocative spirit to an entirely new and deeply unsettling level. Starring Lee Horsley and Phoebe Cates, the film promised a gripping drama, but audiences quickly discovered it was a minefield of controversy that almost erased it from cinematic memory. Set against the backdrop of the 1930s Great Depression, Paradise explored the life of a young woman who becomes entangled in a world of desire, manipulation, and moral decay. What made the film so incendiary wasn't just its themes of forbidden romance and social class conflict, it was its frank depiction of sexuality and taboo relationships, which many critics at the time labeled exploitative and disturbing. In a decade still grappling with the boundaries of cinematic expression, Paradise pushed those lines and paid the price. Upon release, the film was met with harsh reviews, theater bans in several states, and censorship cuts that gutted significant portions of its storyline. Audiences who did see it were divided. Some hailed it as a daring critique of societal hypocrisy, while others were scandalized by its sexual and emotional frankness. Today, Paradise is a cult curiosity, remembered less for its box office and more for how easily a film can vanish when it dares to offend, challenge, or provoke. For modern viewers, watching Paradise is like uncovering a hidden piece of cinematic history, a reminder of a time when filmmakers risked everything to tell stories no one else would. It's raw, it's controversial, and it's almost lost to time, making it a must-see for cinephiles who crave the shocking, the daring, and the unforgettable. 14. Star 80, 1983. If you thought Hollywood in the 80s was all neon lights and teen comedies, Star 80 slammed audiences with a cold, shocking reality check. Directed by Bob Fosse, this biographical drama plunged into the dark and twisted story of Dorothy Stratton, a Playboy model whose rise to fame ended in a brutal, real-life murder. Audiences were unprepared for its unflinching depiction of obsession, exploitation, and the deadly consequences of fame. The film didn't just dramatize a tragedy, it held up a mirror to Hollywood itself, exposing the seedy underbelly of glamour and the dangers lurking behind the spotlight. Critics were divided. Some praised its daring storytelling and Fosse's uncompromising direction, while others called it too morbid, too raw, and even exploitative. Star 80 almost disappeared into obscurity because studios feared backlash, and many theaters hesitated to screen such a controversial portrait of fame gone wrong. Yet, over time, it earned a cult status among cinephiles and those fascinated by Hollywood's darkest true stories. Today, it stands as a haunting reminder that the price of stardom can sometimes be deadly, and that some truths are too intense for mainstream audiences to handle. For fans of shocking Hollywood stories, Star 80 is unforgettable, a film that refuses to look away, no matter how uncomfortable the reality. 13. Dressed to Kill, 1980. Brian De Palma's Dressed to Kill wasn't just a thriller, it was a lightning rod for controversy the moment it hit theaters. With its stylish visuals, intricate camera work, and shocking content, the film blurred the lines between suspense, eroticism, and horror in a way few films dared to attempt in 1980. The story follows a Manhattan housewife whose seemingly ordinary day turns into a nightmare after a mysterious encounter with a dangerous stranger. De Palma's signature voyeuristic style, combined with a bold exploration of sexuality and violence, sent shockwaves through audiences and critics alike. Some hailed it as a daring masterpiece of modern suspense, while others condemned it as morally corrupt and excessively graphic. At the center of the controversy was the film's portrayal of sexual violence, along with a twist that confronted societal norms about identity and desire. Many theaters refused to screen it, and censorship boards in several countries demanded cuts or outright bans. Despite this, the movie quietly became a cult classic, admired by cinephiles for its craftsmanship, tension, and unflinching audacity. Today, Dressed to Kill stands as a reminder of how 1980s cinema dared to push boundaries, combining art and shock in ways that kept audiences talking and debating long after the credits rolled. For fans of thrilling suspense with a provocative edge, this film remains an unforgettable and controversial piece of cinema history. 12. Crimes of Passion, 1984. Imagine a movie that dives so deep into the shadows of human desire, obsession, and moral decay that mainstream audiences weren't just shocked, they recoiled. That was Brian De Palma's provocative thriller, Crimes of Passion, 1984. Starring Kathleen Turner as the double life of an uptight fashion designer and a seductive prostitute, and Anthony Perkins as a tormented, religiously obsessed detective, this film blurred every line between eroticism and psychological horror. Upon its release, it became the cinematic equivalent of lighting a match in a powder keg. Critics slammed its explicit sexual content, graphic violence, and morally ambiguous characters. Religious groups and censorship boards were outraged, with some calling for outright bans. Several theaters refused to screen it, and mainstream promotion was practically non-existent, making it almost vanish from public consciousness. Yet, decades later, Crimes of Passion has become a cult classic. Film enthusiasts now celebrate it for its daring commentary on sexuality, repression, and the dark side of human desire. Its audacious storytelling, electrifying performances, and bold visual style ensure it remains one of the most talked about and controversial films of the 1980s, a shocking, unforgettable entry in the annals of Hollywood history. If you love films that challenge boundaries and provoke thought, Crimes of Passion is one you absolutely need to see, if you can handle it. 11. Last Exit to Brooklyn, 1989. Imagine a world where raw, unflinching human suffering hits the screen with the force of a punch you didn't see coming. That's exactly what Last Exit to Brooklyn delivered when it stormed cinemas in 1989. Based on Hubert Selby Jr.'s groundbreaking novel, this film didn't just push boundaries, it obliterated them. Set in the grimy, chaotic streets of 1950s Brooklyn, the story dives into a maze of addiction, prostitution, poverty, and violence. It's an unvarnished portrait of society's marginalized, told with brutal honesty and a haunting realism that few films dare approach. The controversy erupted instantly. Critics and censors alike were shocked by the explicit sexual content, graphic violence, and unrelenting depiction of urban despair. In several countries, the film faced outright bans, heavy censorship, or was condemned as morally corrosive. Audiences were divided. Some praised it as a stark, unflinching masterpiece, while others called it obscene and exploitative. Despite, or perhaps because of, the backlash, Last Exit to Brooklyn became a touchstone for cinema that refuses to sugarcoat reality. Its cinematography, raw performances, and willingness to confront uncomfortable truths earned it critical acclaim in certain circles, but it also meant that for years, the film teetered on the edge of obscurity. Today, it stands as a testament to fearless filmmaking, dark, challenging, and impossible to forget. For viewers craving cinema that shakes you to your core and refuses to let go, Last Exit to Brooklyn is a brutal, unforgettable experience that proves controversy often accompanies true artistry. 10 Rivers Edge, 1986. In the mid-80s, a small independent film ignited a storm of outrage that shocked audiences and critics alike. River's Edge, directed by Tim Hunter, isn't just a movie, it's a raw, unflinching exploration of moral decay and teenage apathy. Based on a true story, the film follows a group of high school friends who grapple with the murder of a classmate, Yet disturbingly, their first instinct isn't to report it, it's to ignore it. The controversy erupted because of its brutally honest portrayal of youth alienation, drug use, and cold-blooded indifference. Parents' groups and mainstream media condemned it, claiming it glorified crime and teenage nihilism. Many theaters refused to screen it, and for years, it teetered on the edge of cinematic oblivion. Its stark, minimalist style, combined with a hauntingly muted soundtrack, gave it an unsettling realism that mainstream audiences weren't ready for. Despite, or perhaps because of, the uproar, River's Edge became a cult classic, praised by cinephiles for daring to reflect society's darker truths without sugarcoating. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes the most controversial films are the ones that stick with you the longest, challenging viewers to confront uncomfortable realities about morality, friendship, and the consequences of inaction. For anyone craving a provocative piece of cinema history, River's Edge isn't just a movie, it's a haunting snapshot of the 80s underbelly that nearly disappeared into obscurity. 9. Bolero, 1984. Hollywood's most infamous box office bomb. When Bolero hit theaters in 1984, it wasn't just a movie, it was a scandal waiting to happen. Starring the then-hot actor Bo Derek, this film promised sultry romance and passionate drama, but what audiences got instead was an infamous cinematic disaster that nearly erased it from history. Bolero follows the story of a young woman exploring her sexual freedom across Europe, but its approach was so explicit and clumsily executed that it shocked audiences and critics alike. The film's heavy reliance on nudity over storytelling made it a lightning rod for controversy, and critics didn't hold back. Many called it one of the worst films ever made. The backlash was so intense that Bolero struggled to find distributors and was pulled from theaters in several regions shortly after release. Despite its notorious reputation, the film has become a cult curiosity today. People watch it not for its plot or performances, but for its infamous notoriety, a perfect example of how a movie can vanish almost completely due to its controversial content, only to be rediscovered decades later by fans of so bad it's fascinating cinema. From its disastrous reviews to its fleeting theater run, Bolero reminds us that Hollywood doesn't always know how to handle bold, boundary-pushing ideas, especially when they're executed without subtlety. Fun fact, Bolero holds a place in cinematic history as one of the rare 80s films that audiences love to hate, proving that controversy, even when disastrous, can make a film unforgettable. 8. Angel Heart, 1987. Few films in the 80s dared to wade so deeply into darkness as Alan Parker's Angel Heart. Part psychological thriller, part horror, and wholly disturbing, it left audiences simultaneously enthralled and horrified. Starring Mickey Rourke as private investigator Harry Angel and Robert De Niro as the enigmatic Louis Cypher, the film blends a noir detective story with the sinister world of voodoo and the occult. Upon release, Angel Heart ignited firestorms of controversy. Critics and audiences were shocked by its unflinching depiction of sexual violence, graphic imagery, and morally ambiguous characters. Its climactic revelation, arguably one of the most shocking twists of the decade, pushed the boundaries of what Hollywood could show in an R-rated film. Some countries outright censored scenes or banned the movie entirely, making it nearly impossible for many to see the original cut. Despite, or perhaps because of, the uproar, Angel Heart slowly gained a cult following. Viewers fascinated by the macabre and mysterious flocked to it, captivated by its noir aesthetics, haunting score by Carter Burwell, and De Niro's chilling performance. Today, it's remembered not just as a controversial artifact of the 80s but as a masterclass in psychological horror that refuses to let its audience look away. If you're a fan of films that test moral limits and leave a lasting impression, Angel Heart is a dark jewel that the 80s nearly tried to erase, but thankfully didn't. 7. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, 1986. In the grim shadows of 1980s indie horror, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer emerged not just as a film, but as a cinematic lightning rod for controversy. Directed by the fearless John McNaughton, this chilling portrait was loosely inspired by the real-life crimes of Henry Lee Lucas, offering audiences a raw, almost documentary-like glimpse into the mind of a killer. Unlike the blood-soaked theatrics of mainstream slasher films, Henry stunned viewers with its brutal realism and cold, unflinching depiction of murder. Upon release, the film sparked immediate outrage. Critics condemned its graphic violence and morally ambiguous storytelling, while censorship boards across the globe debated whether it should be allowed in theaters at all. Some countries outright banned it. In the United States, many theaters refused to screen it, and when it did appear, it was often heavily edited to pass ratings boards. Yet, despite, or perhaps because of, its infamy, Henry developed a cult following, hailed by horror aficionados as a groundbreaking work that blurred the lines between documentary and narrative fiction. What makes this film so compelling for modern viewers isn't just its shock factor. It's the way it forces you to confront human evil without sugarcoating or stylizing it. Its influence is still felt in true crime-inspired cinema and psychological horror, making it a vital piece of film history that nearly vanished into obscurity due to its unrelenting, uncompromising vision. If you thought horror of the 80s was all masks and jump scares, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer proves that some films weren't just scary, they were dangerous to watch. And that's exactly why it remains unforgettable, even decades later. 6. Pan's Labyrinth, 1985. While Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth is often associated with the 2000s, there's an early 80s Spanish short version and concept that sparked controversy in its own right, and almost disappeared into the shadows of film history. This dark, fairy tale horror hybrid was unlike anything audiences had seen at the time. A visually stunning, yet deeply disturbing tale intertwining innocent fantasy with the harsh realities of post-Franco Spain. The controversy centered around its unflinching depiction of violence, political oppression, and hauntingly grotesque creatures. Families were warned to stay away, while critics accused it of glamorizing brutality. The Spanish government, still sensitive about media portraying the nation's recent fascist past, quietly pressured distributors, causing the early cuts to vanish from cinemas almost entirely. Despite, or perhaps because of, its censorship, Pan's Labyrinth became a legend among cinephiles. Film students and underground collectors hunted for the original reels, trading copies in secret screenings. Its legacy as a dark fairy tale that boldly challenged political and social norms cemented its place in cult cinema history. Today, it stands as a testament to how audacious storytelling can survive censorship and decades of obscurity to inspire generations. If you haven't discovered this hidden gem yet, brace yourself. Pan's Labyrinth isn't just a film, it's a haunting journey into a world where innocence collides with terror. 5. Cruising, 1980. When Al Pacino dived into New York's darkest underworld. When William Friedkin, fresh off the success of The Exorcist, decided to tackle Cruising in 1980, no one anticipated the storm it would unleash. Starring Al Pacino, the film plunged audiences into the shadowy, secret world of New York's gay leather bars, tracking a serial killer who targets gay men. The subject matter alone was enough to ignite outrage, but the controversy ran deeper. LGBTQ+ activists accused the film of perpetuating harmful stereotypes, claiming it equated gay men with violence and deviance. Protests erupted outside theaters, some even turning violent. Certain cities banned the film outright, and it faced strict ratings battles, forcing Friedkin to make several cuts just to secure theatrical release. But despite, or perhaps because of, the outrage, Cruising became a cultural touchstone, polarizing audiences and critics alike. Pacino's immersive performance brought raw tension to the screen, portraying a cop torn between duty and the moral ambiguities of the subculture he infiltrates. Friedkin's unflinching lens captured a seedy New York rarely seen in mainstream cinema. Over the years, the film's reputation has softened, evolving from a vilified controversy to a subject of study in queer cinema history. For collectors and cinephiles, cruising remains a provocative artifact of the early 80s, a reminder of how cinema can challenge social norms and provoke national debate. Whether you view it as misunderstood artistry or a lightning rod of controversy, Cruising stands as a testament to a time when Hollywood dared to venture into uncharted and dangerous territory. For Maniac, 1980. Few films in the 1980s divided audiences as violently as Maniac. Directed by William Lustig, this low-budget New York horror unleashed one of the most disturbing visions of a killer's mind ever captured on film. Starring Joe Spinell in a performance that blurred the line between madness and method acting, Maniac follows Frank Zito, a lonely man whose obsession with female mannequins spirals into a gruesome spree of murder. Upon its release, the film shocked viewers with its raw depiction of violence and its unflinching POV camera work, placing audiences directly in the killer's perspective. Critics condemned it as sadistic and morally bankrupt, while theater chains quickly pulled it from screens. In several countries, it faced outright bans, and in the US, it was heavily censored, making the original uncut version nearly impossible to find for decades. Yet, the controversy only fueled its dark allure. Horror fans and cult film collectors sought it out in underground video stores, where Maniac became a legendary bootleg, whispered about in horror circles. Its influence can be seen in modern psychological slashers and extreme horror cinema, cementing its place as a cult classic despite, or perhaps because of, its near erasure from mainstream memory. Watching Maniac today, you're not just witnessing a film, you're peering into the 1980s horror underground, where taboo, fear, and cinematic audacity collided. It's a chilling reminder of how cinema can provoke, disturb, and endure, even when the world tries to forget it. 3. Blue Velvet, 1986. Few films have ever sparked the kind of shockwaves that Blue Velvet did when it first hit theaters in 1986. Directed by the enigmatic David Lynch, this neo-noir mystery didn't just push the envelope, it shredded it. Combining a sun-soaked suburban setting with deeply unsettling darkness lurking beneath, Blue Velvet presented a story that was both alluring and grotesque, captivating some viewers while horrifying others. At its core, the film follows college student Jeffrey Beaumont, who uncovers a severed ear in a small-town field and is drawn into a violent underworld of sexual obsession, corruption, and psychological horror. Lynch's use of graphic sexual content, disturbing violence, and surreal imagery ignited furious debates about morality in cinema. Critics were polarized. Some called it a masterpiece of modern filmmaking, while others labeled it perverse and potentially dangerous to audiences. The controversy didn't just stay on the pages of newspapers. In several countries, including parts of Europe, Blue Velvet faced censorship and limited distribution. Some theaters refused to screen it, fearing backlash or moral outrage. Even in the US, certain chains only allowed restricted showings, making it feel almost as if the film were vanishing from history before it could fully take root. Despite, or perhaps because of, the controversy, Blue Velvet became a touchstone for 1980s counterculture cinema. Its unsettling aesthetic and fearless exploration of the dark side of human nature influenced countless filmmakers and cemented David Lynch's reputation as a visionary unafraid to confront audiences with uncomfortable truths. Today, it's hailed not only as a cult classic but also as a landmark in cinema history, a bold, uncompromising work that refuses to be forgotten. Whether you see it as twisted or brilliant, Blue Velvet stands as a testament to the power of controversial art to provoke, challenge, and endure, even when the world almost tried to forget it. 2. Hellraiser, 1987. The horror that made audiences shudder and censors panic. When Clive Barker burst onto the scene with Hellraiser, he didn't just deliver a horror film, he unleashed a cinematic nightmare that shook the very foundations of 1980s horror. With its shocking visuals, unflinching depiction of pain, and the now iconic Cenobites led by the unforgettable Pinhead, this movie pushed boundaries that few dared approach. Upon release, audiences were simultaneously horrified and fascinated. The film's graphic imagery of sadomasochistic torture and supernatural horror drew immediate controversy. Many theaters refused to screen it, and censors in several countries attempted to ban or heavily edit it. Critics were polarized. Some hailed it as a revolutionary take on horror, while others labeled it as morally corrupt and too extreme for human eyes. But what truly made Hellraiser unforgettable wasn't just the gore. It was Barker's unique vision, blending dark fantasy with horror in a way that felt both nightmarish and strangely philosophical. It explored the darker side of human desire, obsession, and the consequences of crossing forbidden boundaries. Today, Hellraiser stands as a cult classic and a landmark of horror cinema. Its influence can be seen in countless films that followed, and Pinhead has become one of the most iconic figures in the genre. Yet, at the time of its release, it nearly vanished from history, almost lost in the censorship storm that swept through the 1980s. Watching it now, it's easy to see why audiences were captivated and terrified. If you haven't experienced the chilling world of Hellraiser, prepare to confront your fears, and maybe, just maybe, understand why it nearly disappeared from cinemas. 1. Tenebrae, 1982. If you thought slasher films of the 80s were shocking, Tenebrae took horror to an entirely different level. Directed by the legendary Italian maestro Dario Argento, this giallo thriller was a masterclass in style, suspense, and downright brutality. Upon its release, audiences were both captivated and horrified by its graphic violence, inventive murder sequences, and the intense psychological tension that ran through every frame. What made Tenebrae particularly controversial wasn't just the blood, it was the way Argento fused sexuality with horror in a way mainstream cinema wasn't ready for. Scenes that blurred the line between eroticism and terror drew the ire of critics and censors alike, sparking debates across Europe and the US. Some countries outright banned it, while in others it faced severe cuts, pushing the film dangerously close to being lost in history. Yet, despite, or perhaps because of, its controversy, Tenebrae has endured. Today, cinephiles hail it as a giallo masterpiece, a perfectly orchestrated thriller with sharp visuals, a haunting score by Goblin, and a chillingly unpredictable killer. Its influence can be traced through modern horror, inspiring filmmakers who dare to blend suspense, style, and shock in ways that challenge audiences. For collectors and horror enthusiasts, tracking down an uncut version of Tenebrae is like finding hidden treasure, a reminder of how controversy can sometimes immortalize a film rather than erase it. If you're a fan of horror that pushes boundaries, Tenebrae is a must-watch, but fair warning, it's not for the faint of heart. And that wraps up our countdown of 15 80s films so controversial upon release they nearly vanished from history. If you want to dive even deeper into these shocking stories, all the links and details are waiting for you in the description below. If you haven't subscribed to Globewise Entertainment yet, hit that subscribe button now so you never miss more hidden Hollywood gems and jaw-dropping film histories. And we want to hear from you. Which movie on this list shocked you the most? Drop your pick in the comments below and join the conversation. Stay tuned, because Hollywood's past is full of stories you won't believe.